Hi, I'm Nate Flax.
I'm Noah Longworth-McGuire.
And this is Talking Lion.
Talking Lion is a podcast focused on artist-to-artist conversations.
We're primarily artists, a duo called Sleeping Lion. And throughout our career as songwriters and producers, we've had the opportunity to work with so many incredible rising artists.
Talking Lion is about hitting record on the conversations we've had with our musical friends and collaborators to get a glimpse into what their life's been like and where it's going.
A few reminders before we start.
Firstly, we now have a Patreon for fans of the show to show their support and help keep the show going.
As a Patreon subscriber, not only will you earn rewards, but you'll also gain exclusive access to a chat room in our Discord server.
Here you can talk with us and even suggest questions for our guests.
Go to patreon.com/talkinglion to subscribe.
We appreciate your support.
As we mentioned, we also have a Discord server that's become a sort of community hub for Sleeping Lion and Talking Lion. We're very active on there and very eager to talk to you about who you are on the show and how you feel about the new episodes, as well as just talking about life.
So yeah, come through and you can talk with us. You can make some new friends, share your art, and share your memes.
Go to sleepinglionmusic.com/discord to join our server.
We hope to see you there.
Quick announcement. You can now vote for Talking Lion for the 16th Annual People's Choice Podcast Awards.
Your vote could get us nominated, and we can even win an award for this show.
Your support and that recognition would mean the world to us. So please go to podcastawards.com to vote for Talking Lion in the music category. Lastly, our face is on a shirt. We have shirts now for Talking Lion with our faces on them. If you want to wear us on your shirt, buy a shirt. It helps support the show, and it shows your friends that you like Sleeping Lion and Talking Lion.
You can find these shirts on our website, sleepinglionmusic.com/store. Pro tip: Patreon supporters of the honorary Lion tier or higher will get a free shirt.
Now back to the show.
We recorded this episode with Nate's best friend, David Leone.
I've been friends with David for over a decade, and over the years, he's been a trusted source of feedback and honesty that's been invaluable to me. He's had a hand in almost every major decision I've made in my life, and we even named Sleeping Lion and subsequently Talking Lion after him. We thought it'd be cool to chat with him and get his perspective on what it's like to be the best friend of an artist, to be a kind of lighthouse to our ever-rocking ship. We had this episode in mind since the start of Talking Lion. It was nice to finally have David in Los Angeles and do it with him. So,
without further ado,
I'm David Leone, and this is Talking Lion.
well, hey.
Hey, how you doing?
I can't believe we actually have you in person on the show. Like, that's actually a little mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a long time coming. I've wanted to do this for a while.
Absolutely. I mean, for people who don't know, you are my best friend.
Right.
Like, you are one of two. The other one is downstairs currently.
Yeah.
Keeping himself very, very kindly busy. But Luke and David, this is David Leone.
It's me.
We named the band and the show, and I guess every subsequent line thing.
Anything that has a line in it.
Anything that has a line in it.
Yeah.
we named it after you.
Yeah.
Because your last name is Leone.
Right.
And we made a film together when we were in high school where you were asleep on a desk. So I called them Sleeping Lion Productions. And then we started the band, and Noah saw them and liked them. And then here we are. 78 years. 78 years later.
Yeah, I guess it would be a little problematic if Noah didn't like me.
Yeah.
Right.
We'd have a little bit of an issue naming it after me.
Yeah. We'd have an issue, I think, broadly of like, we couldn't hang out or like do anything fun or like whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that like one of the things that I think would be really interesting about having you here is that I think that we talk a ton with artists and and other creatives and stuff, but nobody's doing anything alone. I think most of our artist friends have a David, have a best friend who isn't necessarily in music, who can bounce ideas off and like talk honestly about like what we're doing without having an actual like stake in like the game of it.
Exactly.
I mean, even having you on the podcast, you were the person who I was sending the first episodes to, being like, is this all interesting to you?
Right.
Like, is this for somebody who's not in music? Do you like this? Is it like, so I think one of the things that I really want to talk to you today about is just like what our friendship's kind of been like,
exactly,
and then I'm going to try to pull at the end. I'm going to try to pull a little bit of the creative juices out of you too. But
I don't know. Okay, well now I'm scared, but okay, I guess we'll see where
we
go.
This is what you come here for.
Sign up for
Talking
Lion. We'll pull the juices out.
Will you be a pirate? We'll just wait and see.
Wait and see.
I guess the first question I have is because I know sort of like my memory of our at the beginning of our friendship,
Right.
which is that you were very sports oriented in high school.
Yeah.
And we both had this mutual friend in Luke, and we didn't know really that much. I mean, you knew more about me through Luke.
Yeah.
So I thought you were a different David, honestly.
Right.
I thought you were this other like kid.
We can go down that
like,
rabbit hole.
And we could. I mean, the long and short is we fought when we first became friends. Like when we were first friends,
there needed to be a couple fights actually before we laid, kind of the groundwork for the friendship.
And we would hang out with Luke, and then at one point Luke was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna
threw us in a room together. And
yeah,
was like, get along. I can't do this anymore. Yeah, exactly.
And then I think the turning point was when we hung out alone.
Right.
Because there's so much like story of how we actually wound up becoming like friends. But I think that what I'm most curious about is like I knew what my first impression of you, which I think actually is one of the reasons we did fight when we first became friends, because I'm like, this is the sports guy. This is like the guy who, likes the, popular kids or whatever. And I wasn't unpopular, but I floated a lot.
Right.
And so my question is, what was the vice versa?
What was the vice versa?
Like, how did you see the music kid in school?
Well, for me, and I mean, I guess this is kind of a testament because I was already Luke's friend, but I was, even though I was very much part of the, sports world, whatever, playing 3 sports a season, I never really jived with like any of those kids. So I didn't really see it. I didn't like you or Luke. I didn't really see like, oh, that's like the music kid. I was just like, oh, that's like my best friend's best friend. You know what I mean? Like, and like, obviously there was an element, we're all middle schoolers. I'm not going to act like there was, no, colored glasses at all, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it for me, and
we were playing shows sort of too,
right?
Like,
yeah, exactly. Well, because
exactly.
I'd known of you. You were always playing around, and I would go everywhere Luke went.
Right.
That was my best friend. I didn't hang out with the guy that played opposite me on the field. You know what I mean? At all.
Right.
So that wasn't my vibe. Like I didn't hang out with those people. I didn't like them. I just liked to run around and kick things.
Right.
So like, you know what I mean? Like that was kind of what it was like for me. And my mom always talks about this with me, is how she not so much impressed, but like just like loves the fact that like you and Luke became my best friends because of what I could have been as a person at that time. And I mean, for me, once we got past the hurdle of me being extremely like confused by how we, never really like met or like even began a relationship together at all. I thought, I think we kind of just hit the ground running really fast because you realized very fast that I wasn't, the sports guy.
Well, I think also in a lot of ways, one of the things that's that was so sort of fundamental about my relationship with Luke was that he was the guy who would like tell you the things that nobody would tell you.
Right.
Like, and that is both like the honest truth to your face about like what you're doing, but also like even when we were younger, when we were in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, he was the one who would explain, what like sex was. He was the one who just seemed a little bit, despite being younger than me, was older. And so he was the one who I think that like, and still is, always had an idea of what he wanted, knew how to execute it, like didn't let any of the other like stuff get in the way. But I think that by the time you get to high school, like that takes you to a certain point.
Right.
But I was an emotional little fuck. Like, and I think that where you and I related was we had our like practicality and our plan like anchor in Luke, but we needed somebody to bounce like stress, and emotion, and all that
stuff
shit.
that you have feeling the unexplainable
all
off
that
of
stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I think you and I like wound up after.
And that was probably a welcomed weight off of Luke as well.
For sure. And honestly, I think it's the reason why we probably fought so much. I remember you and I used to just like, even when we were like capital F friends, we would sometimes just get in a car and just yell at each other just to get it out of our system.
Well, exactly.
We were so angsty.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think
and it was sanctioned. We'd be I'm not mad at you. You're not mad at me. We just need to yell in a car and drive down the street.
Around. Yeah, and I think that was like an important thing, and like kind of goes back to the like kind of personality type that I am, in the sense that like I didn't want to be a part of the hyper masculine group of guys that like didn't know how to like scream about what upset them, what made them angsty or whatever. And I think that was a very good dynamic to have, especially because we were very distracted by other things emotionally.
Yeah.
and Luke wasn't.
Yeah, Luke.
So like, you know what I mean. So like,
we learned later, obviously, that Luke obviously had his own other stuff, but we were so vocal about it at the time, for sure.
We had to feel a thing and be like, I'm feeling this thing. It's fucking
and get it
sucks.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
It would fester. It would always fester.
Like, of course.
You were part of a trio, Noah.
I was part of it. I was part of a couple trios. Because my
you moved around a lot.
I moved around a lot, and people close to me moved around a lot. So I had kind of different iterations of trios that I'm varying degrees of still close with. Like I have like the trio that I started my first band with, and then I also have the trio that I started my second band with, and then the trio that I started my third band with. Like I had like many different eras of friends. Like I don't quite have a friendship analogous to yours that goes back all the way. I have like it split into
like the version.
Well, the thing is, I think it's still, you know, important. Anything can be profound in that way, because I mean, it was hard to. I'm assuming it was hard to like keep that kind of bond across literal oceans.
Yeah.
So like, you know what I mean? So yeah, especially when you're that young.
You mentioned something about like your friends in sports and how you didn't really like vibe with them. What's funny was like I was in a band in high school. I was in a band throughout middle school and high school. And while I was like friendly with them, I never really gelled. Like I never really like hung out with them outside of like when we would practice, and a lot of that dynamic started turning into kind of like I was playing, and then like I had a drummer, even though it was supposed to be a band. And I think that in a lot of ways, our talks and like the emotional intelligence that required to have those talks is what made me feel so comfortable going to school and being able to relate to people and like being able to like, because you listened and I listened, like we learned how to like really fucking listen, and that was so important. Kind of like going into, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's why we have a podcast. It's just so that we can have the honest conversations. We didn't bullshit with each other. Exactly, we never did.
Well, which is like that was kind of an issue. I get not an issue, but like a problem I struggled with was you two were like my world, whatever. You know what I mean? Like. And that was very much where I felt at home, personality-wise, you know, most comfortable. But then I feel like a lot of what you and Luke did was like you were the same person all the time. And I don't want to use the word had to be, but I kind of had to be two different people a lot.
We sort of jokingly would call it David and Goliath.
And the thing is, you do something, you practice something enough times, it becomes a part of you, right? So I branched off and became two people, like just, you know, throughout being young.
But I think so much of our friendship was that we would call each other out when we were not being like authentic to ourselves. Yeah. And like for you, that was with like the popular kids in school. For me, it was with relationships. Right. Like I think that whenever you saw, because I could never tell, whenever I overextended on a relationship, you were like there to say, you have now given more than like you would give anybody. Right? Like that's fucked, you know. And I appreciate that. Like I think that being able to have those sort of checks, but also again like having that kind of like open dialogue, I think is a lot of how we wound up. Becoming like, because I think you're a lot more like Luke than like David.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that in having these like all these ideas of what dynamics can be. I pulled a little David out of you, and you pulled a little Luke out of me, you know, like just I mean, if I may, you know, or whatever, like just this idea of like, you and I would argue until the wee hours of the evening, just to like make sure we were comfortable in what we were doing.
And I don't quite remember how it was that you guys met. Was it like a roommate situation?
Yeah.
Was that like a random roommate situation?
No.
So okay, yeah. So you guys can.
Yeah. So
there was a dorm back in Berkeley called 270. Rest in peace. Well, not rest in peace. It's
still there. Noah's actually going to burn it down right now.
And we lived on the same floor, the fourth floor, but Nate was down the hall, and I had this room that had a second door, which had a finicky lock, or we would just leave it unlocked. So people would just kind of wander in and out of my dorm room. That's how I made most of my first friends at school. Like people would just like
walk in.
Because it was right next to the bathroom too.
And,
so
and my
people would just be
roommate,
curious.
my roommate went to bed at like 9 p.m.
And especially with all your equipment, you're playing something all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So people can just kind of come
people
and
just kind
schmooze
of come
around.
in
Yeah,
and like jam, and just like that's how I just made a bunch of friends early on.
Okay.
So it was, my room became sort of a de facto communal room for like some people.
Well, and that's the thing. My roommates would go to bed at 9 o'clock, so I would just like wander
around and
just to do work. I mean, we would barely even talk, or occasionally we'd like jam and stuff. And we were friends, but I don't think if you were to ask him or you were to ask me, like, were we close?
Yeah,
not necessarily.
He was just one of many people who was just like, yeah, he's just he's on the fourth floor, he's around, like,
right?
Because everybody was a bit like close because we all hung out. That's
Right.
the whole thing of 270 is like that. Everybody hangs out. That's like it's the hangout sort of dorm building.
You're kind of starting your music journey in a sense, even though you've been doing it your whole life. Kind of like the more like I don't know, like serious part of it.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. You were there for like a lot of for the folk stuff when I was in high school. I mean, hell, we were just talking about you drove me to pick up.
I drove you to pick up your album artwork for the first law.
Yeah. For like literally my first record. Like,
right.
And that was all like, you know, I was kind of doing that stuff, and I was collaborating with Sam, and you remember Donald from Coffee Labs, and we were just sort of
everyone had their own projects.
We were just working on stuff, and then when I got to Berkeley, I didn't want to do music. Like I think you remember, like when I got to Berkeley, I got really into the film stuff.
Yeah,
but actually, this is another like you've come in clutch on a phone call like a dozen and a half times because it was when the night I met Halsey.
Right.
The night I met Halsey.
You ran and you said you were
and I like,
I love this story so much.
But here's the thing is like that's our story.
Right.
But the thing is that that's when I got to the dorm. I talked to Halsey. I didn't know who she was. She, gave all this information about breaking into pop music. I was thinking about do I care about pop music at all, which I'd never written, never done, whatever.
Right.
I didn't know how to produce all of that stuff. And I was in film already, like doing pretty solidly. So all that was sort of swimming in my head. And of course, I get back to the dorm and Noah's working on a beat. And that, as the myth goes, though it might have been a couple days later.
Right.
I mean, the myth is that it happened right then and there.
Right.
In actuality, it might have happened a little bit later. But, Noah's making the beat and then we start the project.
Right.
But a kind of crucial part to the story that I leave out because,
it's just kind of part of your origin story. Yeah.
Is that I had to walk home from Cambridge. And for
this phone call
from people who don't know, the walk from Cambridge back to 270 is about an hour.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with you for that entire hour.
Yeah.
And if I didn't run into your room that night, it was probably because I was still on the phone with you.
Right.
When I was passing by your dorm.
That makes
sense. It could have
sense.
been that I was on the phone with you and I clocked it while we were on the phone.
Right.
Clocked you that you were making a beat.
We were sort of talking about
We were talking about everything.
And you told me what happened.
Yeah.
And because you had been a Halsey fan for a while,
No, my girlfriend had been.
Yeah, and you showed me, and it was very early. So this is pre-Badlands? I don't know.
Pre-Badlands.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I didn't necessarily recognize who she was, which is why we started randomly talking. But I did know her music because my girlfriend. Like I didn't know what she looked like, but I knew what she sounded like.
I remember you showed me a couple times,
stuff.
and I thought it was great. But I remember you felt like this experience was sort of profound. You were kind of trying to talk through if it was. You were just like it was that was more or less, the good, like the serious part of the phone call was like, does this mean something? What I just experienced, does that mean something? And now, obviously I was like, yes, it probably does.
Because at that point I was just sort of jumping around or didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do.
Right.
I appreciated the conversation so much.
Right.
I want to pick your brain as much as I can. Like, what do you remember from that night?
The thing is,
I was probably mad. I was manic as shit. I don't remember anything.
I don't remember what it was, but I don't remember like many specifics, but what it mostly was, like a lot of it was like we were kind of talking through like if that was important. What you had just experienced, if it was important or not, and clearly it ended up being important because I don't know if you guys. I'm assuming you guys got a lot closer after you were like we're doing this thing now.
Yeah.
We're not just like fucking around with folk.
No, I mean, well, so the truth of the matter is that like I went on that folk tour that winter, which was December into January. And then the Halsey thing happened in April.
Right.
And I get back from the tour in December and my folks tell me that they're getting divorced, which I immediately come to your house.
Right.
Like I literally I was like, my parents are like, are you good? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to go to David's. I get to your house. I'm just crying on your like in your room for an hour.
Right.
Like you literally were like, I'm just gonna leave you here. I'm like, that's probably for the best.
Well, because I'd already gone through.
Yeah, you're like
family divorce.
You're like, I could say anything, or I could just like go. I'm like, you could just go for a second, and I'll be like, I'll be fine. But the thing is that I mean, Noah and I were acquaintances, and probably would have been acquaintances.
Yeah.
Like throughout, because similarly, in the same way that I feel like we all became friends out of circumstance, right?
Right.
Because I became friends with Luke because he was the new kid on the bus. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's just the chaos of the whole system, But I think that like Noah and I didn't necessarily know we would get along to the degree that we did.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's super obvious. I don't think it's super obvious to people now.
Yeah, right.
Like if they didn't know we lived together for 7 years, they'd be like, those are two very different people.
Two very different people, yeah.
But I think it was that I was really inspired by that night.
Right.
And we were talking about this when we were at the bar the other night, that I think that lucky people, I mean, there's a study that like people who like define themselves as lucky are oftentimes paying attention or focusing on different things more. And I think that it was one of those things where when I ran into her, I was just paying attention more but paying attention to people who I might not have paid attention to prior to. And so
what's the thing about epiphanies? Is everything in the periphery coming into focus?
Yeah. That's what we said around the time too.
I think that's what made me think.
It was all bubblers, and so and so then Noah and I started working on stuff, and then incidentally we go back to New York. I'm going through the Katie breakup,
right,
and like the effects of my parents' divorce with you in New York, and Noah's in Rome,
right,
and
also
so
going through a breakup.
I'm going to Lighthouse Cafe every day,
right.
And Skyping Noah.
Oh, and I'm sure you were jazzed about when he came back and said, we're in the wrong band. Like, we need to be doing this thing, because you were making beats and just producing just for fun.
Yeah.
We're doing stuff. And then when Nate was like, "Can you like do that, but like for us?"
For us, with a specific plan of what it could mean. I was just like, "Oh yeah, that sounds pretty cool."
Yeah,
like, that actually sounds like that's the thing that I've been missing. I've just been creating kind of aimlessly, and here's someone who's like, "Oh, I have an idea of what to do with this." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm down. I'm down for whatever."
Yeah.
And I mean, that's an identity thing. I think like I'll always have for me, it's always, I'm going to have a plan.
Right.
Whether or not I can back it up with any kind of talent, we will figure that shit out later.
Right, exactly.
Like, here's the plan. Here's how we execute it,
Right, exactly.
Like,
it might like sound bad or be whatever, but it's going to, be organized as shit.
Yeah. I mean, think about every misadventure you and I have gotten into.
Oh, of course.
Extremely well planned. Terribly organized. But yeah, I mean, I think, and it's all those little things, is because I even think about, that we went to that I was at Lighthouse Cafe,
right,
when, R.I.P. Lighthouse.
R.I.P. Lighthouse.
Is that how it closed?
It closed.
Whoa.
Heartbreaking.
That's horrifying.
Like when none of us had a chance to like go even look at it, to be honest.
I know. We didn't even get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is like Lighthouse was so significant to our friendship because we would go with Nicole. That's where you and Nicole met, and we all became friends.
We all became friends,
and like we would go there every day. Like for all subsequent summers, like we would just go every day.
Yeah.
But Lighthouse was also parallel the place where Noah and I became closer,
right?
And talk about what our plans were, and bounce demos along, and send lyrics along, and all that stuff.
And now was that summer also when you were like, if I'm going to be doing Sleeping Lion, right? I can't be also in this other program.
The myth is that yes. The truth is that I had just started working with Gene that summer,
right,
and was just starting to get my first films. So when we went back to Berkeley, I had about a year of doing features, and it was in the year of doing features and pulling 48 hours on Adderall and having to do 72 revisions. That's when you were like. That's when I was like,
I can't be doing both at the same time.
I can't be doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
And also just like the rhetoric was that if you're gonna do something, you have to give it your everything,
right.
And I was like, I was ready to make that trade regardless of whether or not anybody asked me,
right.
Which I think was like part of the reason I like eventually needed to go to therapy, because like literally it just took somebody to be like, nobody's asking you to give up anything.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're going hard and it's not working because you're miserable doing it. And I'm like, oh. because I gave up everything for it.
Yeah, exactly.
My broader question in this is that you are a fan of music.
Right.
I mean, you and Luke were listening to dubstep before that was like a thing. You
Right.
guys were listening to house music when that was starting to have its reemergence. Like everything that I knew about
electronic dance music.
About electronic dance music, I learned from you guys.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, we tell this story all the time. I don't know if we've told it on the podcast.
I don't know if we have.
But our first song, You Made Me, it starts in 5/6, goes to 6/6, and then drops in 4/4. And that doesn't mean anything, whatever.
Right.
And it's important that doesn't mean anything to you, because we were doing what's called metric modulation, which is we were taking the click and doing the math to figure out what those changes felt like. But the thing is that we had done the math perfectly on the drop of You Made Me, so that it was a perfect consistent tempo throughout and the change throughout, and we send it to you and Luke. And you both,
I remember where I was, exactly what I was doing.
You both were like,
no,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Well, just as a fan of, electronic music for so long, and I remember I was at University of Connecticut kind of struggling through like not liking anything about that school at all. But yeah, I was in some stupid, general education course, whatever it was. And I remember getting I don't know how, I think it was just like finished at that point. Or you kind of were like, we need input on this now. And you sent it to both of us. And we damn near instantly were like, I pulled my headphones out of my bag in the middle of class, wasn't paying attention for the rest of class. And I put them in and I was like, yeah, like the melody, of that chorus of the drop was great, but I was like, it doesn't feel right. I didn't know. The thing is, I don't know what that means. I don't know what, like, technically speaking, rhythmically, anything like that. I don't know what that means, but all I knew is that it didn't feel right.
Well, and that's the thing is we
but that's what we needed.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
We always
need a fan.
We value like there's the philosophy of like take the note, not the suggestion.
Yeah.
Like if something doesn't feel right to somebody, you can't write that off of like, oh, they don't know music, because if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
And what wound up being the thing is like we were doing all this like math to get it right, but we didn't stop to think, does it work? And what works is that if you're gonna have this slower, because like 5/6 and 6/6 has a slower feel because it's a waltz. It doesn't matter what tempo you drop it in, drop it faster.
Yeah.
That was all we needed to know. So we sent it to both of you. You're like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. We bumped that tempo up by like 5 or 10 or some shit like that, and it felt awesome.
Yeah, we were like, when it became bigger and more impactful,
we just bumped the tempo.
Exactly. It felt
there
better.
There was no math to it.
Exactly.
Like the thing is, we were getting bogged down in the same way we recently did in our escape room.
Right.
We're getting bogged down by musical knowledge.
Right.
And what you guys reminded us was that at the end of the day, somebody's got to fucking listen to this.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how perfect we get that math if it doesn't feel right.
Of course.
Yeah.
So that was like a huge impact. And I remember also the following summer, we sent you like 22 grooves that we were
right.
around with.
Maybe one of which has been used since. Right.
One of which has been used, and you want to know where?
Where?
The theme song of Talking Lion.
Yeah. And I think that's like the only one that's ever, right?
I think a couple of them.
Yeah.
One of them was a Vespertine song.
Yeah, one of them became a Vespertine song.
One of them became Medicine by Vespertine.
I remember being like pretty gung-ho. And I think you might have been visiting.
We had an Excel spreadsheet.
No,
Noah lived with us for
right. I was
summer.
saying you might have been there at Nate's house, and I remember, and I remember being like really like into like many of these groups because you sent like, I think you sent like 20 or 15.
Yeah, it was
like,
it was a crazy
10
number.
people.
Yeah,
and you were like, all right, give us like 10, and it might have been Molly might have been involved in
Molly
wanting
was.
some of them or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think you guys were like, all right, we have this big list, give us a vote. And I voted, and there was some that I like really, really vibe with, and others were like, I sent that I like this one. You guys were like, we're not ever using that one.
Well, it's that. I mean, the irony is that was probably the Talking Lion theme song. But I think it was that whole process came from this really interesting issue that we had, which was not knowing how we like to write and not being confident in trusting our own gut on it.
Right.
So I think that on the one hand, I didn't realize that I prefer to write from scratch as opposed to top line. It's called top lining over a beat. So Noah was writing all these ideas and all these grooves, but I just couldn't write over them because it was just really like kind of messed with me.
Right.
And
it was probably foreign to you at that point.
It was just hard to do because I was so kind of used to like, I was just writing bullshit. I think I was just writing bullshit because I couldn't like feel out the rhymes like I wanted to. Like a sort of, I come up with stuff kind of like a slam poem a little bit. So when the groove is so firmly set and I can't adjust those things, I get really locked into like stupid A/B shit.
Yeah, it was like it was like a water filter making the stream of water like extremely slow. It's like here's the beat. You have to go through that filter, and then it becomes something instead of just writing. Yeah,
people are great at top lines, which is how like medicine happened. And also, what was funny was those grooves I would revisit, and one of the grooves, which was this like 3/4 groove, that I was like, it kind of clicked, wound up being the groove for We're Fine.
Okay.
Because we wrote We're Fine in 4, but this 3/1 worked and unlocked the song for us. So in a lot of ways, those grooves have had like these weird. I gotta re-listen to them now. I gotta go back.
I've always wanted to re-listen to them, and I kind of. Do we still have the spreadsheet? Like, we can see what you voted for and everything. That'd be great.
But that was the other thing too, is that at the time, Noah and I were having these like crazy discussions. I think you and I were also having similar discussions about.
Well, we were hanging out a lot. A lot.
We were talking about quality versus marketing. The biggest question was about like, does quality matter if your marketing is airtight? If you're in a world where your marketing is capital P perfect, like, does the song matter? And if you're in a world where your song is capital P perfect, does the marketing matter? And I was firmly of the belief on the marketing, and Noah's I was of the belief that if the song was perfect, nobody would know without the marketing. And Noah was of the belief that
if the song's good enough, it doesn't need much traction to get off the ground. People
or if the song is bad, no amount of marketing is gonna help that.
Exactly.
And I think that we wound up kind of realizing that there's no such thing as perfect songs or marketing. And it's just about these quality balances and these these ideas.
I feel like every song that becomes ridiculously big, just at least from an outsider's perspective, it's always this perfect, like unexplainable perfect storm of like. I mean, obviously, if you're not just like Kanye releasing an album now.
But you're right.
But like, it's just some crazy perfect storm of whatever the fuck, and it becomes
and that's even the people working in the highest level of the music industry are just like we don't know.
It's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm, but they're all different storms.
Exactly.
One storm's forming on this region, and it's because of those weather biomes, and there's other storms forming, in Tulsa for that reason, and those weather biomes, and it's all just these different storms.
Exactly.
I'll never forget. This was, I think, one of I have so many interactions with my grandfather that I love because he's such a smart guy, but also does not mince words. And my grandfather, obviously. And I was talking to him about buying a house or like buying a cabin because I want to buy this Big Bear cabin. And I asked him while we were driving in the car last time I saw him, I said, you have some experience with this. Like, when's the best time to buy a house? And my grandma goes, if you knew that, we'd have a lot of money.
That's really funny.
That's really good.
But it was actually this really beautiful moment where I realized like so much of what anybody does is based on this thing of nobody knows. And nobody is supposed to know, and that's what lets these things be dynamic. If we knew what made a hit song, if we knew the sort of infinite jest of the thing, then the game would be over. Everybody would just do the same thing.
Which is interesting because I think what happens once you get that like very organic, very like unperfect, like crazy perfect storm of whatever, you don't ever get that like. You don't ever get that again. Even if you're already popular, you have a team. You have ridiculous. When they calculate what to do after that, you might have very popular songs. It's never like as crazy and organic as it was the first time.
If there is a success specifically through a platform, when people realize that platform is driving the success, the saturation takes away the power of the platform.
Exactly.
So you had it with YouTube virality, into Hype Machine, into Spotify playlisting, into TikTok.
TikTok now,
and the thing is that it's just these cycles of success, follow, saturation, new thing. And so that's the thing is like there's never going to be a perfect, like there's a perfect storm on different platforms. But we were even saying like our friends who like blew up on TikTok in 2020, they didn't know that was going to be what did it for them when they started their project at Berkeley or whatever,
exactly
3 years before TikTok existed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's all about these, convection currents,
literally
thermodynamics, whatever. But to the groove point, like I think we wanted to have this vote system to somehow create like an objective idea of what was good.
We were focus grouping our music,
right?
Because we were going through the kind of early growing pains and identity crisis of like, well,
what are we? What do we sound like?
We're trying to play to this hype machine platform. There's a lot of different sounds out there. Like I'm the kind of person, and I've definitely found this. I've gotten a lot more clarity on this as I've gotten older. I'm the kind of person who can make a lot of different types of music. So in an artist project, it's very important to have a focused, clear vision of what stuff sounds like. And I think we were kind of trying to parse through that and say like, what kind of flavors and color palettes of music like are the best for us?
Yeah. Well, I think we wanted our third song to be a hit.
Yeah.
As opposed to like writing 400 songs and figuring out that like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And I think you guys did a good job of that. I remember being like kind of part of that process of you guys kind of trying to find your sound. You didn't really know.
I mean, definitely
what was going on during that time. Which has become a very different thing now,
right?
By the way,
right?
In like the best way.
Like it used to be like, do you vibe with this? Now it's like, does this feel like it's authentically us to you?
Exactly.
Like I'll send you a song which I know is not necessarily what you'll blast in your car, but you're like, this sounds more like you than anything you've done.
Exactly. Right. And a part of what I like about it now is it's not. I don't think since maybe like 2 or 3 years ago I've ever had the note like this doesn't feel right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It always feels right.
Yeah.
It always feels like you. Like there's never like a drastic change that needs because you guys found it. You know what I mean?
Well, and
you always have the vision and do it well, and then you kind of just like fix it up.
We call it 50 Shades of Great, like which is like what's just tricky is like once you are able to provide a quality to what you do, finding what makes it special or what makes it stand out from other stuff. When you've got 50 demos or whatever, it's like really, really tricky.
Which is like the gang vocals and like We're Fine and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like,
I mean that's
so fantastic.
Well, and also it just makes it a no-brainer. Like if if I've got a song that has my best friends on it. Or like Wine Drunk, which you guys are going to record after this.
Of course.
When there's something like that, we call it skin in the game. When there's something that makes a song special to you, like that's how you know that it might connect because it is authentically something that is so special. Right. And that is, embodies it. And for what it's worth, a great story on the press release if we are going to talk about marketing. But like when I was starting folk stuff and I showed Luke a song and I'll never forget this because he said he didn't like it. But he said that it was the first time he could listen to it as a song that didn't sound like an amateur song. It sounded like a song. And in that, he didn't like it. It wasn't what he would listen to. It wasn't his genre or whatever. Again, Luke is a straight shooter. But I remember that really resonating with me because I was like, okay, there's the quality gap. We figured out the quality gap. How do we get people to like this, now that we've closed the quality gap, how do we get people to connect with it? And that's, I think, the biggest thing is that you can have somebody who loves dance music tear up at a folk song. Right. Like there's a world where that happens.
Yeah.
Or a world where you write a folk song a la Mike Posner.
Right.
And it becomes a massive house track.
Exactly.
And the song is malleable enough to be able to survive that transformation.
The idea and the song.
So that was kind of where my brain went afterwards, which was just sort of like, it's not about like once you get quality out of the way, it's not, and marketing even to a degree out of the way, it's about writing something that we can stand behind. Because we were also realizing too, we're not going to put our money and our guns behind a song that we are sick of.
Yeah.
We are going to pull our punches, whether it's conscious or subconscious.
Right.
So being able to be like, well, fuck, like you're on this song, Isabel's on this song. Like, I'm not pulling my punches on this thing. Here's my budget. Here's everything. Let's go. You know?
And I was actually going to mention that I think, especially moving to LA, and I'm sure everyone that you've worked with has a similar progression story in the sense where you like, I didn't know what I was. I found myself. And then like, we found our quality.
Right.
Maybe not like a perfect whatever, but like you found your quality. And I think a lot of the music you guys have released, over the past couple of years, it's like has a very like a certain quality because of all the great people you've also worked with.
Definitely.
Which, and I like that I can get, as a fan can get really excited about like, oh, someone's on this track now, I wrote with this person today, and like I get really excited about that, and I think that's like really awesome.
And I think similarly, like whenever I'm not sure where I sit about something, I always kind of turn to you guys of like, is this cool to you? Like, when we work with Lizzie, I'm like, we love Lizzie. And we could write with Lizzie forever, but there's that little extra piece of validation that we know you like her stuff.
Right. And I know that it's going to be cool. I think it was a big difference for me as like seeing you guys progress from like, nothing. Because I didn't know how LA worked. I didn't know how, writing sessions worked. I don't know how any of that worked. I just knew that it was you guys making everything all the time. Right. And then when it became like this thing, which is very much normal here.
The collaborative,
and we're just always writing together all the time. And, any idea is anyone's. And let's go off of that. I think that's great.
Pausing the podcast to shout out our sponsor, New Wave.
No, I've been drinking coffee my entire life.
As a Roman, same.
As a New Yorker, absolutely.
It's our birthright.
It's our birthright. We came out of the womb drinking coffee.
Fully caffeinated.
And the thing is that we're not getting any younger.
That's true.
And we're not getting any less anxious.
Oh, man, that's true too.
I'll say I have loved coffee my whole life, but lately it hasn't really been agreeing with me.
How so?
Unfortunately, when I drink coffee now, I just start feeling very agitated, very anxious. I've been looking around for alternatives that don't make my heart just beat out of my chest while I'm in the middle of working. And that's how we stumbled upon New Wave. New Wave's Flow State Coffee is an organic ground coffee meant to lower anxiety, improve brain function, and support creativity. With L-theanine and raw cacao, Flow State Coffee is meant to feel like a cup of hot chocolate or tea while giving the energy of coffee.
And now, through Talking Lion, you can try a couple cups of your own.
If you go to their website, newwave.co, that's N-O-O wave.co, you can use the code BrewingLion for 10% off your first order. We hope you get a creative boost and find your flow state.
Now, back to the show.
Well, I think, and I love telling you the stories when I get home. I think my favorite part of coming home is just like showing all the demos to you.
Yeah, exactly.
I never want to like text them to you. I always want to like sit in the room. So I'll come by with like 12 songs and just like show you in a car ride.
And it's great when I know the stories.
Yeah.
And they're like, this demo is because of this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's great because we talk all the time.
But I think one of the things that we tell a lot of people on the show, and we try to tell people when we're working with them too, is that there is this idea that has an agenda that producers, capital P producers, are people who are running the big studios, people who, are behind the computer and doing all of that stuff. And they are, you know, but throughout history, the producers, in the history of music George Martin didn't know how to use Logic, because it didn't exist. Right. And I feel like the thing that we try to tell people, especially artists, especially young artists, is you don't need to be touching the computer. You don't need to be touching the DAW to be a producer. What it means to be a producer is to get the best version of the song, right? And whether that's pulling that out of you or pulling that out of the producer you're working with, and being able to hear what a song could be. And so to that degree, I think genuinely you have a producer's ear and you are a producer. And we, listen, I'm not going to give you royalties because you work a 9 to 5 and you make sick money and I'm not giving you our cash. But I think you could make a case for yourself.
Yeah, I think you had a production role on You Made Me when you told us it wasn't right. That's a producer's no.
Of course.
And I think that there are
very much being a part of it at all is kind of, enough for me, to be honest, because I don't know anything else. Because when you can turn a note into something that great, it's like definitely doesn't feel, like I did.
But what I'm playing at is that there are people who are good at notes. Right. That's me. Yeah. And then there are people who are great at executing notes, and that's Noah. And the thing is that, and I've stood by this, and I hope you haven't minded that I have over the years. But I stand by that. I'm a good producer. Yeah. Even though if you were to put me in front of the computer, I wouldn't be able to do what he can do. Right. But I think that being able to hear a song and in 5 minutes give 3 pages of notes, or give one good note. I always have, and this is something that he knows. Even if I haven't touched the song, even if he started from scratch with somebody or whatever, he knows that the moment he texts me, I have a reference song ready to go.
Right.
I have an instrument idea ready to go.
Yeah.
Like there is always, for me, I always have like the card ready to play if he needs it.
Yeah.
Like
no, I'm honestly so impressed by your brain's ability to come up with notes on literally anything. Like whether it's like a movie we've just watched or a joke, like that's just the way your brain works.
Right.
It's really it's awesome.
It's because that's I think what part of being a producer is, and we are a production duo because Noah can come on a project from the beginning, from the middle, from the end. Great.
Right.
And I can tell an artist, is the songwriting getting in the way? Is there something that could be improved in the songwriting before you get to production? Is there something that we can lean into in your style or in your references that makes it feel more like yours? Because we can make an EDM track out of your song. Why not?
Right.
What makes it yours?
Exactly.
What do you like and what will you feel connected to? Like I feel like that that idea is what makes us producers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in a lot of ways too, there are so many people like yourself who are so immersed in music who think, well, maybe I can't do this even on a professional level or whatever because I didn't go to music school or I didn't do this or I don't know how that note works or that. But I think just your ability to be able to hear a song and know what you like and don't like and articulate that genuinely gives you an ability to do this if you ever so chose.
Exactly. And I think it goes,
and why you're my favorite producer to send music to. I mean that. Like we, you have your people, you have whatever. If I need notes on a song, I'm not sending it to other producers. I'm sending it to you, my favorite producer.
Exactly. And I think that kind of goes back to one of the first points, which was like, I think it's important if you're a musician, and I don't want to be, this is not to be preachy or whatever, but like, I think it really is important as a musician to have a friend or many friends that aren't at all part of your life to send your stuff to, that are just fans of whatever they might be fans of.
Yeah.
And to just maybe not, have them, completely change your art, but to, give you those notes, just to be like, this is the emotion that made me feel. This is how I feel. This is how I think it could be good or whatever. Just having a friend that's, outside of your world. I think it is important to have that.
Well, because your best friend can't lie to you.
Right.
Like, that, like I know you well enough. We just played poker last night. Like, I know you well enough that if I send a song that you're not vibing with, you won't ask me about it 2 months from now.
Also, we're not going to network for something else. Like you're not seeing me out somewhere to network.
You don't have an agenda.
I don't have any vested interest in anything that goes on.
Exactly. Even if you're being nice, you're like, this is all right. Like I know when you're fucking with me, like, and I know when you like a song too, because every time we talk about it, you're like, so remember that song you like did with like, so what happened to that?
What happened to that one? I'm like, can we get that one back? You're like, oh no.
But that's the thing is like I can genuinely like gauge, and of course taste gets into it. Like we don't make EDM anymore,
right? Which I don't think that was where you guys should have went or were gonna go.
No,
anyway.
we accidentally
we accidentally did that for a second, but because it was the hip thing. Because it was
you guys found what you're trying to do, and I think it's a lot better. It's definitely it's better, but it's also just like feels more genuine.
Yeah,
to you
exactly.
Too. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, I think the biggest part about it is that we're now making stuff that, instead of it being like, oh, this is what you're gonna hear at like, the next like rave you go to or whatever.
Right.
Like this is stuff. When I send it to you, you're like, okay, you're not lying to yourself. You're not lying to your listeners. Like you're making your stuff, and it's honestly about like the hill that we want to die on. Like when we started, we wanted to do this to the degree of, Zed or like whatever.
Yeah.
And we would make music that sounded like that anyway. But now what we connect to the most is making the music that we listened to when we were driving in the car from a feel standpoint.
Right.
Like that we did feel great. Like what we liked about Zed wasn't that it was EDM. We liked how it felt, all of us listening to it together in a car.
And a lot of what's happened, and this is not even true for like 4 or 5 years ago, right? A lot of what's happened, because there's obviously going to be the niche things all the way on one end of the electronic music spectrum, and niche things on the other end of the pop music or folk music, whatever. But the kind of lines that blur, because you said like, oh, we don't make EDM anymore, right?
Right.
A lot of the lines that are blurring stuff now, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter.
Anything that makes you move, it's dance music, like, or it's pop. It doesn't matter anymore. Like it's like. And I think you were a very big part of me being into like, kind of opening up my ears to not be edgy about certain pop music as well.
Well, because you were definitely
it's the same thing now.
I remember we were driving and I was explaining how Closer worked. Like, not about whether it was good or bad or whatever, but just what made it work.
Right. And I think that was the more so of like, not the early stages of it, but just like, it's all the same thing now in a sense. Like, you say like, sound like Zed or whatever, that doesn't really
Zed doesn't even sound like
that doesn't really have any
yeah.
weight anymore, that sentence in and of itself. And I think that's really interesting because the amount of times that I find myself enjoying something that I definitely wouldn't have enjoyed because it's just, it all has the same elements as everything that I enjoy anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like it's crazy and it's great. And yeah, I think that's.
But I mean, I think in a lot of ways too, you do wind up finding yourself early to stuff as well,
right.
Just because you are in some of those fringe scenes that wind up getting
right,
like sort of co-opted by a mainstream or something like that too.
Yeah,
you know, in the same way that like I thought it was funny, like we were like big fans of Dermot Kennedy, like
Paradise is
just
great song.
Like we were fans of his when he was doing like the sort of folky vocoder stuff, you know, like Boston or whatever, and then. But then he gets co-opted into Medusa. And
right.
Medusa, on the one hand, was also a bit fringe, wasn't
right.
he? Weren't they?
Well, like, Medusa is like an industry plant or something. I don't know. Like Piece of Your Heart came out of nowhere.
That was a breakaway hit.
Exactly. Yeah, Italian guys, they would like went to go find these guys to like make this ridiculous pop house hit. And it's fantastic. And everything they release is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's just like, Jesus. They feel like aliens or something. I don't know.
But for what it's worth, like the things you like because you're driving or because you go to these shows or whatever. Like we like to kind of like cry quietly in our room.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't make dance music anymore because we don't listen to dance music anymore.
Right.
Like we listen to indie music and folk music and very wordy pop culture type music.
But all of it is sort of informing itself because you're right, the barriers are breaking down and you can have a house song and a folk song on the same record.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, all of Billie Eilish
and we have.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so interesting about it. It's all becoming just like, you know, and I don't know if that's a testament to like fans of music or just people in general, just like being more okay not being put into one bowl or whatever, but like I think just good music is good music.
I think it's like, because keep in mind we're 25,
right?
So it's people who are now like having like capital C careers in this. Like I would say people who are maybe 10 years older than us still, like this applies to, maybe people who are 20 years older than us had to follow a lot more kind of rules to be playing the game because there was a lot more sort of pressure in all these spaces. But I feel like a lot of these producers now grew up with a lot of the same kind of homogenous iTunes cacophony of different genres,
right?
Because, you know, before you kind of had like, oh well, here's the three records we're pushing on the mainstream and here's like the indie side of it. But when we grew up, you had, you know, you can download the Red Hot Chili Peppers next to Say Anything and Under Oath, next to, you know,
Britney
Skrillex
Spears.
and
next to Skrillex, so yeah,
Britney Spears and Katy Perry,
right.
And your iTunes is this crazy collage of stuff, and all of those people are now successful producers.
Right.
All those people who grew up listening and having all of this like crazy language to work with.
Yeah,
you know, all of these like colors and paints and stuff at their disposal. They're the ones I think breaking down the genre lines because they didn't have genre lines growing up. Of course, there were the genre lines of all, you know, okay, now we're listening to pop, now we're listening to rock, now we're listening to pop punk. But if you're just driving in your car with your phone on shuffle or your iPod on shuffle,
right,
you know, you're not clocking what genre it is.
Exactly.
You're just getting it all. And you know, somebody like Luke loved jamming out to Bring Me the Horizon,
right,
as much as he liked jamming out to UKF dubstep.
Exactly.
You know? And I think that like that's what informs our shit now.
Yeah.
You know?
Or, you know, Justin Bieber and Skrillex were in a room together and then that's what started. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Like,
I mean, you're right though.
I mean, kind of.
You are right though. Yeah. You're not wrong. Yeah.
That record really did a number on all of us.
I mean, I think it just sent the whole thing sky high.
It was the fuse. It was the little thing that blew the whole.
Well, yeah. What I think was great. What I think was great about that was like fans from all walks of music genres saw that happen and were like had almost the exact same reaction.
I'm gonna say it could have also been like "Wake Me Up."
Yeah.
Definitely did a bit of a number.
It was definitely a lot of the culmination of everything. I just wanted to make
Taylor
the joke.
Swift's "Trouble."
That's true. I mean, yeah, that is very, very valid too.
Yeah,
it's these. Yeah, I mean, pop crossovers. It's been a slow process of
right.
But again, stuff that came out
pots.
while we were in high school. I don't even necessarily am considering part of this movement currently, because again, we are talking about people our age.
Yeah.
People like Phineas,
Mhm.
you know, who's obviously a bit younger, but like people like Phineas, people who just grew up
Right.
doing this and are now in their prime
Yeah.
Mhm.
as producers with all of this hodgepodge
Yeah.
stuff.
And I
You know?
and as like a very like, and you remember me as in high school and how devoted I was to, you know, dance music and gatekeepy I might have been, but like through you, mostly you basically teaching me about, you know, the pop scene and how, you know, good music is good music, and when it gets this sort of push around it, it gets a lot better, becomes better. And I honestly wouldn't have said this years ago, but I couldn't be more grateful that people that I followed like Burns and Chami produced, you know, a song with Ariana Grande and Lady Gaga. Like it's fantastic, and I love it. You know what I mean? Like, which is what I would not have said a long time ago. But like the fact that, like, you know, I think that's great.
What I kind of I remember this conversation well, because one of the things I kind of like really called you out for was this like have your cake and eat it too kind of thing, was because I felt you and people broadly in sort of EDM communities were really like, oh, I don't want, you know, Grizz or Grammatic or Brass Tracks, whatever. Like I don't want them in the mainstream. Like I want to like protect them, and I don't want anybody to find out about them, and I don't want them on the radio and like all this whatever. And then table that on the other side, you're like, fuck mainstream music. This shit sucks. Why is the production so terrible? Like why is there no like complexity or talent to it?
Yeah,
and you didn't see the connection between the two.
Exactly.
Because I'm just like, well, if these guys can be informing the mainstream, then they're making money, and the mainstream gets better, and we're all good.
Well, and I think exactly, and I think I like even, you know, cringe at using the word mainstream anymore.
I mean, me too.
Because like
it's like you wouldn't use the word mainstream for the ocean.
Yeah, right.
You know. Like everybody thinks that like the music industry is all these sort of like rivers that like connect, and you can, if you want, like build a little dam, and that's your little community there. But you're in the ocean.
Yeah.
Like the closest you have to some sort of separation is like a pocket of like warm water around an area of cold water, or like a little coral reef that's very pretty maybe. But like by and large, like it's the fact that Brass Tracks could accidentally produce Chance.
Right.
It's that like Medusa could wind up being on every fucking radio.
Exactly.
You know, it's all of these like the chance that anything can sort of hop off, that is what makes it so special.
Exactly.
Because anything that pops off is informing everybody else.
We just have this happen with Driver's License. So you have a song, it tends to happen every couple of years. You have one big ballad, right? Like we have the big ballad. But Driver's License just passed 1 billion streams faster than pretty much any song ever has. And it's just like, I don't think anyone on first listen was just like, yeah, this is it. You know
or I mean? Any like guy in a suit said that would have happened either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just one of those things.
But now everybody's like, you know, and we get to see it. I think the missing piece too is that casual listeners aren't aware of what it's like in a room, which is when you're in a room.
I'm not aware of any of that.
When you're in a room, so often like you're the artist or you are pulling up like reference music. So if Driver's License is what's happening, or if, you know, or if Billie Eilish is what's happening, or like whatever, then when we're in sessions, that's the song that we're playing in the session to kind of get in our ears. Oh, I guess we're writing a ballad today. Oh, I guess we want to get that vocal tone. Oh, I guess we want to get that piano. I mean, the whole idea is like steal like an artist, you know, that kind of, you know, that idea that now has everybody up in the air about, you know, Misery Business and Olivia Rodrigo.
Right.
But I think, you know, for her, you know, she's got an older producer. He's pulling up Paramore.
Yeah.
Literally.
Exactly. Because that's what he probably was, you know, kind of grew up listening to and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So again, like, I think that what people don't realize, when a song does really, really well in a mainstream setting, it winds up having an influence directly in sessions.
Right.
Like, it's not just like that they were listening to Driver's License on the way over to the studio. It's that we were playing it through the sessions.
Right.
You know, and you start to see what's kind of like bubbling.
Right.
You know, if Fiona Apple is like referenced more than one time in a week of sessions,
that's gonna guide it.
I'm like, okay, I guess people are really feeling Fiona Apple.
Yeah.
Right.
Like let's learn about this better.
I think the thing, you know, just to expand on it a little bit, I think the thing that I always try, it's kind of like take the note, not the suggestion. I get that a lot with references. Like people play me a reference, and I think a lot of producers are really good at doing sound alikes and just recreating the reference, and that's it. Whereas I think for me, this is why I like to have people come up with a big playlist of references, because I like to get a sense of
like a vibe.
Like it's about the.
It's not a sound, it's a vibe.
It's not a sound, it's a vibe. It's not okay. This song sounds like that, so let's make a song that sounds like that. It's like this song sounds like that, and you like it. Why do you like it? What do you like about it? Why do you like the things about it that make you feel something?
And you need more context for the like emotions of that type of feeling.
The same can be said for the songwriting. I mean, if somebody says that they really, really like Deja Vu, what I'm getting isn't necessarily let's write a song like Deja Vu. I mean, the chorus could even be a lower chorus. Like I could write a song with a Deja Vu reference that doesn't go up on the chorus.
Right.
Yeah. What I'm getting is they like the soft sort of loud and angry dynamic. Exactly. They like really, really detailed lyricism, which I love doing. So then when they're in the session, I'm like, okay, so tell me those details. Where were you? What did you eat? Like, what did the place smell like? Yeah. What were you wearing? Like all of those little details that we can kind of play with. And so we're not trying to write a song that sounds like Deja Vu. We're trying to understand what they like about it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Pausing the podcast to remind you that we have a Patreon that you can subscribe to if you want to support the show.
If you're enjoying this episode, but you're thinking that you've got a burning question for an artist, or you just want to talk with us, or maybe you just want to mug with our faces, our Patreon's the way to go.
So go to patreon.com/talkinglion to subscribe.
Now back to the show.
Conversations exactly like this one, and kind of getting a direct look into, you know, what the life was like and the process of that. Similarly to how, you know, getting notes from me as an outside source, right, helped you guys. Me as just like a fan, like a stupid edgy fan of electronic music, whatever, like seeing that process directly and so, you know, intimately was very much what, you know, pulled me out of that sort of mindset. And I think, and now that, you know, and conversations exactly like you guys just went off on still blow my mind. Like it still is so interesting to me.
Well, but you also get to sort of see it in real time too. Like, do you remember that song "Happy For"? Like where I literally like wrote a verse about like the New Year's that you and I had, like,
exactly,
you know, with Luke together. Like, I think that like the big question that I kind of want to like ask you and kind of wrap on, is I'm always looking at our life, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but I'm always looking at our life of how are we going to tell these stories, you know? And for me, it's like, you know, when we hang out, like we love telling stories. We love when we all hang out, like talking about some of the crazy shit that we've done together and all that whatnot. Like
that's what hanging out has kind of turned into.
Our stories together are so important, which is why we want to pack like the week that you're here with so much stuff to do, just so that we have, like, I think we could have a great time at home, or we could do, you know, we can go to a bunch of movies and concerts and whatever, but what we want is to tell the story of how we found the spooky bar.
Exactly.
You know, we want to tell the stories of like, you know, how we figured out that escape room, or about the picnics, or like whatever. Like, we are so about stories. And for me, that's creativity. For me is like what I choose to focus on and how we synthesize it. That's my creativity. My question to you is that, like, because what your profession is and vocation is, there isn't necessarily a creative outlet for you. Like, you know, I'm so impressed, by the way, with your work. I told you I was jealous when we visited Philly.
Yeah.
Because for people who don't know, like, you're a civil engineer.
Yeah. So, I work at a company. We do the overhead power design for the city that I live in, Philly.
So at one point, like, you pointed to like an electrical pole, and you're like, oh, I think I probably put that there.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to me because I'm like, you know, we've written hundreds of songs, and you can stack all of those songs on top of each other and it would still be air.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And here I am looking at this like 10-foot thing, this 20-foot thing that you created and put there. So you have this sort of like physical presence. I remember just being like genuinely jealous of the physicality.
Yeah.
But my big question, I think, would be an interesting sort of wrapping space. Yep. My big question is, what do you do with your creative impulses? How do you feel creative? When do you feel creative? Have you ever thought about having a creative outlet or hobby or something like that?
Well,
what makes us different when it comes to creativity? Why do I have to make stuff and you don't?
Exactly. So I feel like my creativity, especially since very much a STEM mind, I'm an engineer, I went to school, did the whole math thing, whatever. My creativity comes just through getting people to solve a physical, like real world physical problem. Mm-hmm. Right. It doesn't it's not so much turning my emotions into, something that a bunch of people can, vibe with. It's just kind of like putting a bunch of people's heads together and figuring out something. And I think there is a lot of creativity in that, even though we have like very structured, ways to do things in, the engineering world and construction, in, software engineering, all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of the reason that us as, people in STEM are good at what we do is because our creativity outlet is figuring out how to solve a problem, which I know you wanted me to give you something that sounds different than what you do, but no,
that I was just thinking we're all creative problem solvers.
But the thing is, what you literally just explained. How do I get this vibe out of this playlist of songs, right, and make it something that a bunch of people like? And is that much different than how do I get these people to draw up this design so that they get to turn their lights on in the morning? You know what I mean? Like it's a lot more nuanced in your case, because you can't give an equation that has that happen, because we were talking about perfect storms. But that's where the creativity is. It's especially, I don't do this, but especially Luke with software engineering, stuff like that. Their entire job is, we have a problem today and I have no idea what to do about it, but we need to do this thing. And they sit there and they figure it out because they're creative.
And I disagree that we don't have an equation, because, you're not trying to light the entirety of the city on one job, in the same way that we're not necessarily the perfect storm. We're only a part of, because they've got their team and their budgets and all that, and all that stuff, and their TikTok and all that. So one of the things that we are, our job, and really the scope of our job, is to write a song that they want to put out. That is the beginning, middle, and end of our job.
Right.
It's not necessarily to write a hit, because that's not in our court, because we can't make the perfect storm. We could write the greatest song you've ever heard for somebody who has 2 listeners, and we're not going to necessarily be able to and hates posting on Instagram and TikTok.
Right, exactly.
And we're not going to change that.
Yeah.
What we can do is get an understanding for their references. And for what they're vibing with and what excites them, understand the energy that they're having in the room, how to maintain that energy when they leave the room through sending updated demos and, and being on it. And then when you're writing stuff about personal experiences, or just that feel good enough to them to want to share, that they would be genuinely upset. We have songs that we're upset aren't out.
Yeah.
That we have written, and it just, it didn't make sense to put them out. But Different Plans is a record of songs that we loved and we weren't going to put out, and then we realized we had to.
Right.
So can we give that feeling, that experience to somebody else? So our job isn't to make a hit. Our job is to get an artist to put out a song. And to that end, we have that down to a science.
Right.
Yeah.
To that end,
exactly.
And does that mean that we succeed every day? No, because sometimes we're tired. Sometimes,
but I'm sure that's true in your case too.
Right?
You could follow everything to the letter, and you might still. Especially in software engineering, I'm sure there's so much stuff you could write out what seems like the perfect code, and you could run into a bug.
It's all just pulling your past experiences from doing anything.
Yeah,
and basically just your knowledge bank, whatever you're experiencing, and the thing is, there's also the whole human element of it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can write the best song, whatever. You can't deal with a personality that you're writing with or you can't get the best work out of someone that you're working with.
I mean, and you could be crushing what you're doing, and your contractor could just like not be returning your calls.
If I don't know how to get the best work out of someone, we can't solve the problem correctly. It's kind of similar in that way.
Yeah.
How many times has, a session went off the rails, or you stopped writing with someone, or a song didn't work? Not just you guys, but like people that because you met and you couldn't solve what you were trying to do.
You could have everybody doing their best job and just having certain things not gel.
Right, exactly.
And the creative problem solving is sometimes even knowing how to remove yourself from a situation.
And I want to go on record and say that, and I know you guys have been refuting when I say this, but I do want to go out on record and say that it is a lot more nuanced when it comes to what you guys do. And I think that's the reason why you guys, when you figure something out, the sky's the limit is like making millions of dollars off of something, and why I have a yearly salary for what I do.
But it's also why they're not trusting us with lighting somebody's home.
Exactly.
No, exactly.
If
very low floor, very high ceiling.
Exactly.
If the variance in what we're doing is the difference between somebody having
we can't have a low floor, or else. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's part of why I have a salary, and you guys can make millions of dollars off doing something on this couch. You know what I mean?
Sure.
No, exactly.
Yeah. But it's also very much why we are not responsible for anything.
Exactly.
Sure, we will create value systems for anybody, but like if the variance of because I mean it's all poker and it's all variance.
Exactly.
Like I'm okay with the fact that like there is more nuance, which means that there's more chance for variance or good luck, bad luck, tricky personalities or specific personalities.
Right. I think that could cause a more of a problem in your world than it can in mine.
Right. So long as we are not making sure that people have heat, right? In the winter, Right. You very intentionally should have a low variance situation so that nobody
can lose their power. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That would be an issue.
But it is so funny too that like I feel like every time I visit Philly, I'm like so insecure because I'm around all these like 9-to-5ers who like know what they're doing every day and like know how much they're making and like know. I remember our friend Jake was really, really drunk, and I expressed this insecurity to him, and he's just like, "No, man, we're like in the shit, but you're the shit."
Yeah, exactly.
Literally. And but similarly, like I feel like when you guys come from,
we're like tourist attractions.
Yeah, when you guys come from
like it's like
LA.
You bring us around to your to people, and it's like, what do you do? And
you guys are like, there's this many people eating breakfast at 12 on a Monday.
Yeah. I mean, my body's been waking me up at 6 a.m. Like I'm ready for work at 9 a.m. You know what I mean? And we can just lazily get up and go get food at 11 a.m. But like at the same time on a Saturday at 8 p.m. you guys are working extremely hard in what you need to do. And we were talking about how there's kind of like the benefits and the disadvantages and the advantages of it.
Like you're on vacation right now.
Yeah, I'm on vacation right now. I haven't looked at a single thing that has to do with work in
blocked 6 days. Off this week, and you
blocked off this week and you're still working.
I'm still working.
I'm going back home to Italy, and I will still be on the computer doing work, even on vacation.
Because the thing is that a lot of like in a 9-to-5 world, like I have what I make, and that is what I'm going to do for the year. You guys, sure, you can block off a week, right? But that is how many ever missed opportunities, right? And that's where the money comes from.
Yeah.
It's that opportunity. It's the opportunities that you need. If you can't just like miss those. You can't just take a day off from missing those opportunities. And that is exhausting in and of itself.
Yeah.
All the being, having to have that part of your brain on all the time.
We have more consistency than most.
Right.
Because of some of the work that we do.
Right.
But also like, I could get 5 films this month and then nothing for a year and a half. And which has happened.
Which is why like people like us like to be like, oh, you guys didn't do anything today because you didn't technically do anything today. You sat at home and whatever, but like you were at all times ready
for something.
Which is inherently exhausting.
It goes back to what I'm saying about luck too, is that like I'm not like I'm on Instagram constantly.
Right.
Like when we're hanging out or like whatever, I'm on my phone. But that's because I am looking.
Being online is a lot more deliberate. Yeah.
I look through stories not to like, be like, oh, what's our so-and-so from high school doing or whatever, but because somebody could be, I mean, people put job offers on their Instagram stories.
Right.
People, I find like really cool artists early to have on the podcast to collaborate with from scrolling on TikTok. And so, for me, there's almost an anxiety of not doing it because I'm like, how many missed opportunities did I have?
Exactly.
Because I went to bed at 12 as opposed to 1 and, scrolling through TikTok. And that's something that I've like moved past a little bit. But with that said, like it's never off. Like we could be at the beach, you and I can open up my phone,
right,
and the first TikTok is like an artist we should be hitting up right now.
Exactly.
You know, and that has happened.
Which is why people can say like they're jealous of, you know, having, you know, a paycheck all they want, which yes, I do completely understand the agency in that, but like that level of anxiety for missing a post on scrolling through your phone is just not a level of anxiety I ever want in my life. So I'm okay doing what I'm doing.
You know? But the thing is that it's actually lottery tickets.
Right.
Like the way that I see it is that every time we like reach out to somebody or every time we take on a project, we are doing a scratch off. And I think we are now kind of like good enough. Better analogy is it's a poker tournament.
Right.
And we are good enough, I think, at this point to always be in the money.
Right.
Yeah. Like I think we're always good enough where if we
rent is going to be paid, food's going to be on the table.
Yeah. Like I think that whenever we work on a project, we are at the point now where that lottery ticket at least like that you know, that bullet is what it's called in poker will at least like pay for itself. Like, you know, if I spend 3 hours scrolling through Instagram in a week, we will most likely get something worth at least 3 hours worth of work.
Right.
With that said, any one of those tickets could be you win first place at the poker tournament, and then you don't have to work for a year or two.
Well,
and that's kind of what we play at.
Well,
you know?
It's sort of the same way when like people feel like they're at a dead end job for however long. Like, you know, my first job, right? I reach a point where my skill set is too good for what I'm doing.
Right.
I need to be doing something more. Like in your lottery ticket kind of metaphor here, it's like lottery ticket was don't struggle, pay the rent. You've done that. You've perfected your craft. You have a thing. You work with a bunch of people. Your lottery ticket now is the moon.
Right.
That's the next step.
Well, and
you become good enough for that.
Right.
And that's your next step. Like that's where you want to go next, and that's where you deserve to go next.
I think for all my insecurities, the reason I could never do a 9 to 5 is because the thing that I need in my life is to know that if I have a good idea, because I've never, again, what he was saying, I'm never, it's never shutting off.
Right.
I need to know that if I have a phenomenal idea at 3 a.m., that could mean something.
Right. Exactly.
That could like be valuable. Like, you know, that if I'm paying attention to the right things, that it could be a podcast, you know, that makes money through its Patreon followers. Please follow us on Patreon. Or it could be, you know, that groove and actually that song that we didn't think can work together, and then that song gets 200,000 streams and pays the bills. Like I love this idea that everything that I do matters. And on my toughest days, it's exhausting because I feel like it never shuts off, that I can never take a break, that I'm never allowed a vacation.
Or it doesn't have a payoff, enough of a payoff.
Or that like I'm really spinning my wheels and I'm having all these ideas,
but
can't execute them, or they're not making any, you know, value or helping anybody, whatever. But on my best days, and whenever I'm like, oh, should I do the 9 to 5 thing? It's like, I just can't because
it's very important to have an outlet for that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Like you guys don't, like your brains don't remotely work in the same way that other people do, and the people that you work with, like you guys need a profession where you can have that at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And it could be the next thing. You know what I mean? It's important to have that outlet.
I'll take the risk of my ideas don't make money, or the risk of I might not have an idea or for a month or something, and that would suck. I'll take that risk if the reward means one good idea in traffic could make a difference, which it has.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like that's where the sort of balance is. Exactly. But that's, I think, why I need a friend to keep me sane.
Right. And which is why I said it's important to have
somebody to keep you on
people
track.
like that. And I would urge, you know, anyone that also is, you know, an office life type person to, I'm sure you all have someone creative in your life, but like you should be friends with someone that's, you know, that doesn't just, you know, your entire friend group shouldn't just be people that, like, you know, get on the subway every day, go to work, go home.
Because we're all problem solvers, so we could all learn from each other.
It's all important to have incredibly different, you know, dynamics in your life. But yeah.
Do you have any like last questions about the industry or about like what we do? Or
I think we covered.
I think we covered a good amount of stuff.
I think that the conversation went pretty good places. I think
I'd say so.
With that, David, I'm just so happy to have you.
This was oh my God. Like more fun. This was more fun than we
anticipated. We anticipated for
we anticipated
years.
Talking for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We talked for an hour?
Oh no, I'm saying we anticipated. We thought it'd be good when we were we should have you on the show 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that it took this long, because that conversation that we had before about, where my head is at in music industry and where you guys are at in the music industry, I think would have been a lot different 2 years ago.
I think so
too.
So So I think talking now was better.
Yeah, if we had you on when we were talking,
I feel like I would have made a lot more enemies listening to your podcast if we talked 2 years ago.
Yeah, when you were 2 years ago, you're like, I want to come into the podcast and I want to shit on this and that. I'm like, okay, no. Yeah, I think what we've all kind of learned,
right?
At 25 is that everybody's doing the same thing.
Everyone's doing exactly,
and we're all in the ocean.
Yeah,
right. And so that's just how it all goes.
And the thing is, and it hasn't become we're all struggling now.
Yeah,
it's become normal for everyone our age to just be perpetually struggling.
To hustle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh God, hustle culture.
I know, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
Right.
I, as a living human being, probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I can trace all the good things in my life to the hundreds of phone calls that I've had with you and with Luke, to the hundreds and thousands of hours we've spent talking about life, venting, getting shit off of our chest. I mean, we're about to name our record Most Improved, partially in my brain after the fact that I got Most Improved in mathematics,
right?
Thanks to you literally tutoring us, doing a crash course at the end of the year. I mean, I love you, man. You're my brother, and we named the band after you. Of course. It's been so nice, even on the days where this does feel lonely or challenging, just to look at our name.
Yeah, exactly.
And know that there's so much friendship in this project.
Oh yeah, and I love you too, and I really appreciate that, because and imagine what it must feel like to me to see a name of an artist that my name inspired. Not only that, then to listen to the song and have the lyrics be basically from a room that I was in, a story that I was a part of in the room that I was in.
Yeah.
Or a line that I said or something like that. It's a profound experience that it's rare and it's awesome. But
I'm gonna know you my whole life, so we'll look back on this after episode 40 of you.
Right.
we'll have you on. We'll check in how we're feeling every couple of years.
Exactly.
But it's nice to finally have you here.
Yeah,
and thank you so much.
I think it was great, and I think it went. Yeah, and thanks for having me. Noah,
of course,
Nate, really, really great, and I'm gonna enjoy my vacation for the next couple days here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Talking Lion.
We would like to thank New Wave and Isotope for their support of Talking Lion.
If you'd like to show your support, ask our guests your questions, talk to us on Discord, and get a shout out at the end of each episode, subscribe to our Patreon over at patreon.com/talkinglion.
Thank you for listening, and see you next time.